My ex-wife abandoned our kids for her affair, then returned, years later with a son, and begged me to forgive her. So I filed restraining orders instead. My ex-wife Angela, 36, and I, 37, met when we were in our mid-20s, around the time I was 24. We were both working at the same firm, and that's how our relationship began. After dating for 2 years, we got married, and within 3 years we had 2 daughters, who are now 9 and 7. The second pregnancy came as a surprise, and she wasn't happy about it. Still, she chose not to terminate it, even though I had told her that I'd support her decision if she did, as I didn't want her to go through something she wasn't ready for. After our first daughter, everything between us was still going well. We were deeply in love. But that changed after the second pregnancy. She became moody, irritable, and often lashed out at me or our oldest daughter. I assumed it was just hormones and tried to accept this new version of Angela. We both hoped things would improve, but instead they only got worse. Eventually, my daughter and I learned to tiptoe around her moods. I took over nearly all responsibilities, even though Angela was supposed to be a stay-at-home mom. She had quit her job willingly after our first child was born, and I handled most of the work around the house, while also caring for our oldest daughter after long hours at work. When she became pregnant with our second, we had to hire a housekeeper because she said she was too exhausted to manage the household and the child. I agreed, even though it strained our budget. I wasn't earning much at the time. I didn't want to add to Angela's burden, especially while she was pregnant. So, I assumed that once our second daughter was born, she would get back to managing the house and kids during the day. And just to be clear, I wasn't one of those husbands who avoided housework. I always pitched in after coming home, even when I was completely drained from work. After she gave birth to our youngest, I figured she'd take a few months to recover, and then we'd return to our routine. But several months went by, and there was no change. Angela remained cranky and distant. She refused to do anything around the house. Most days, she just sat on the couch and watched TV. She barely interacted with the kids and would occasionally pay our neighbor to take them to the park. I don't want to sound bitter, but truthfully, I was. I was working tirelessly day and night while she wouldn't lift a finger at home. Not even the basics. On top of that, the cost of keeping the housekeeper was eating into our finances. She handled all the cooking, cleaning, and other chores, and I was left to cover every other expense. I had dreams of saving up for our daughter's futures, but that was becoming increasingly difficult because Angela refused to contribute in any meaningful way. About 6 months after our second daughter was born, I realized we couldn't keep living like this. I had to confront her. I knew it wouldn't be easy, so I asked my parents to take care of the girls for a day, and they agreed. That day, I sat Angela down for a serious conversation. I told her I understood she was tired from 2 pregnancies, but I needed her support. I explained that the housekeeper was becoming too expensive for us to afford and asked her to return to doing at least some household tasks so we could reduce the hours and cut costs. She immediately refused. She said she was too busy watching the kids to do housework and told me I should earn more, instead of blaming her for our financial situation. I tried explaining that I was already doing my best and that she needed to put in effort too if we wanted our marriage to survive. I also mentioned that from what I could tell, she wasn't really caring for the kids. Most of the time, they just sat with her watching TV while she binged reality shows. That's what our housekeeper had quietly told me once. I quickly realized bringing that up had been a huge mistake. Angela immediately lashed out, accusing me of spying on her through the housekeeper. She launched into a full-blown tirade, claiming she was done being pushed around and forced to do everything while I supposedly just sat at a desk for a few hours each day. According to her, it was my fault we couldn't afford a housekeeper, and she said it was pathetic that I had to beg her to help when I was supposed to be the man of the house. None of it made any real sense. She was clearly just reaching for anything to justify her refusal to do anything all day. Somehow, I was the unreasonable one for expecting her to contribute. The fight escalated quickly. She called me a loser who didn't deserve someone like her. I snapped and called her a lazy cow, saying she had already failed as a mother. Our eldest was scared of her, and now she was failing as a wife too. That really hit a nerve. She shoved me hard, and I lost my balance, crashing into the coffee table and smashing the glass. I was hurt pretty badly and had to be rushed to the ER. Angela cried the whole time and kept apologizing, but I was done. Thankfully, the injuries were mostly on my back and just surface level, but things could have gone much worse. At that point, I realized I couldn't trust her anymore. Not around me, and definitely not around our kids. I told her she needed to move out immediately. I wasn't going to risk her losing control again with the girls nearby. I asked my parents to take care of our daughters while Angela packed her things. For a week, she kept protesting and promised that nothing like this would ever happen again. But I couldn't trust her anymore. I almost filed for divorce. She begged me to give her another chance. Eventually, we reached a temporary agreement. She would go stay with her parents and start therapy. Only once she was cleared by a medical professional would I even consider letting her come back. Clearly, something deeper was going on because happy people don't act like that. To her credit, she agreed to get help. I didn't want my daughters growing up without their mom, so I agreed not to divorce her yet and gave our marriage another chance. We started marriage counseling while living apart. My parents moved in with me to help with the girls while Angela stayed with her folks. Things actually seemed to be improving. Angela's therapist and I stayed in contact. She told me Angela had been diagnosed with postpartum depression. Apparently, one of the symptoms was intense anger, which had never been an issue before. The night she shoved me was a wake-up call for both of us. Over the next few months, things got a little better. Around the 6-month mark, I even allowed her to visit our daughters again, under my supervision. Slowly, it felt like the old Angela was returning. I genuinely believed we were turning a corner. But then, out of nowhere, she stopped showing up for our counseling sessions. No explanation, she just disappeared. She stopped replying to my texts, ignored my calls. Still, her therapist assured me she was making progress. It didn't add up. I kept trying to reach out for weeks, but Angela just brushed me off every time, claiming she needed space. After nearly 3 months of this distance, I had had enough. I decided to go visit her at her parents' house. I hadn't gone earlier because her parents hated me. They blamed me for Angela's breakdown, convinced I was the reason she had changed. She had warned me not to show up there. It would only cause more chaos. And honestly, the last thing we needed was more drama. But this time, I ignored all that and went anyway. She had been acting distant for a while, brushing off counseling sessions, and even when she did show up, she seemed completely disengaged. I couldn't make sense of it. Whenever I tried talking to her, whether face-to-face, over the phone, or through text, she would insist everything was fine. But I could feel it. Something was off. Something was definitely being kept from me. The day I decided to visit her parents' house, I expected Angela to be home. But she wasn't. When I asked her parents where she was, they told me they couldn't say, and then they slammed the door in my face. It felt personal, like they were enjoying shutting me out. That uneasy feeling in my gut grew stronger, so I called Angela while still standing on their porch. I tried several times, but she didn't answer. The paranoia was unbearable, so I decided to check around the house and try to get inside on my own. I walked around to the backyard, hoping the kitchen door might be unlocked. They usually left it open. But I didn't even have to go that far. I saw her, Angela, sitting on the swing in the backyard with her back to me. She wasn't alone. She was making out with a man I didn't recognize. I hadn't seen them for long, but that image is seared into my memory like a scar. It was the most gut-wrenching moment of my life. I'll never forget it. As soon as the guy noticed me, he pulled away. By the time Angela turned around, I was already storming back toward my car. She chased after me, trying to stop me, but I couldn't even hear what she was saying. I was too stunned. When she tried to grab my arm, I shook her off and told her not to touch me. She didn't. I got into my car and drove home in silence. The moment I got back, I blocked her everywhere. Calls, texts, everything. I didn't want to give her even a chance to explain. Then I told my parents everything that had happened and asked them to help me find a lawyer. I didn't see or hear from Angela again until we were scheduled to meet with the court-appointed mediator for the divorce proceedings. By then, I was emotionally numb, functioning purely for the sake of my daughters. I had become a shell of myself, moving through each day with mechanical focus. Even when I learned that Angela was willingly terminating her parental rights, I felt nothing. She had decided she didn't want to be part of our lives anymore. She wanted to be with the guy I'd seen her with. Let's call him Sean. Apparently, he was her childhood friend. They'd lost touch after high school but reconnected when she moved back in with her parents. According to her, she'd fallen in love with him. Her parents backed her fully. They supported the relationship and had no problem with their married daughter making out with another man in their backyard. In fact, they said they'd always wanted her to end up with Sean. They were thrilled she was finally choosing herself and her happiness, as if Angela had ever chosen anything but herself. The divorce dragged on for months. Despite having cheated, Angela still tried to go after alimony, but my lawyer and I fought hard. I had been the one working, providing, covering every expense while she sat at home watching TV. In the end, justice won. She walked away with nothing, and everything remained with me. That entire period was one of the darkest chapters of my life. The emotional weight, the legal battles, it nearly broke me. But I couldn't afford to fall apart. My daughters needed me. They had no one else. My parents were my rock through it all, and I'll be forever grateful for the way they stepped in and helped me juggle work, parenting, and healing. It's been 5 years since the divorce was finalized, and looking back, I can say this with complete honesty. What once felt like the worst thing to ever happen to me turned out to be the best thing that could have happened. If I hadn't made the choice to leave Angela, I wouldn't be where I am today. Life really has treated me well since then. I'm in a much, much better place now, in every way imaginable. We've moved into a bigger house, thanks to a better paying job, and I no longer have to financially support anyone except myself and my daughters. My parents live nearby and often stop by. I have a solid circle of friends who genuinely care for me, and my girls are thriving and happy. That's all a man could ever want, and I've been endlessly grateful to the universe for how things have turned out. Or at least I was, until Angela showed up a few days ago. The kids were at school, and I was getting ready to leave for work when the doorbell rang. I opened the door, and there she was, Angela, standing there with a little boy beside her. He couldn't have been older than 3 or 4, and I instantly knew he had to be her son. I stood frozen, completely taken aback, still trying to process what I was seeing when she suddenly broke down crying and said she was there to apologize and make things right. She told me she was ready to be a family again and wanted to give our marriage another chance. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. After everything she had done, now, just like that, She thought it was her choice to come back and fix things, as if she hadn't walked away years ago. My decision came instantly. I told her, flatly, that this wasn't her family anymore. I stopped being her husband the moment she chose to cheat on me with Sean. The divorce was just a legal process, and she had given up custody of our daughters. No one forced her to do that. So she had no right to show up now, years later, and call us her family again. I shut the door in her face and told her to leave. I didn't want her anywhere near my home. Honestly, I wanted to yell and curse her out. I was furious. But I held it in because of the little boy standing beside her. I could hear her sobbing outside the door for a few minutes, but I ignored it. Once I was sure she had gone, I left for work. I tried my best not to think about it, because I knew if I let myself dwell on it, I might start second-guessing my decision, and I couldn't afford to let that happen. For the most part, I managed to push it out of my mind. That is, until I got home from work and received a call from my parents. They wanted answers. They had just heard from Angela, who'd contacted them after I turned her away. She was devastated. And that's when my parents dropped the bombshell. They were the ones who had given her my new address. They had told her to come see me, that now was her chance to make things right. According to them, Angela had reached out a month ago, saying she was in the process of divorcing Sean and wanted to reconnect with me. My parents believed my daughters needed their mother, and in their eyes there was no better mother than Angela. So they encouraged her to show up and tell me everything. I was livid. They had made such a massive decision without even asking me how I felt about it. What if the girls had been home? That could have ended terribly. It was reckless and completely out of line. When I confronted them, they refused to admit they were wrong. They reminded me of everything they had done for me, how they helped with the kids during the divorce, and how they still stepped in from time to time. They claimed that gave them the right to help decide what was best for the girls, even if it went against my wishes. They said the final decision was mine, but they still believed they had an equal say in what was best for my daughters. I thought that was absurd. No matter how grateful I was to them for their support, at the end of the day, my daughters are my responsibility. I make the choices for them, not anyone else. We argued, heatedly, and then they said something that really stung, that I was the one out of line. And parents had told them that if they revealed the secret, they'd be doing something sinful. That keeping secrets from their father was okay if it meant they could see their mom. That shattered me. I sat there, stunned, as my daughters cried in front of me, scared that they'd be cursed or punished by some higher power just for telling their dad the truth. They were terrified, not of me, but of the lies they'd been fed by the people I trusted most. My own parents, my ex-wife. All of them had manipulated innocent children into carrying the weight of their deception. It was one of the most heartbreaking moments of my life. After comforting my daughters and assuring them they weren't in trouble and hadn't done anything wrong, I told them they never had to lie to me again. I promised them I would always protect them, no matter what. That no one, not even family, had the right to make them feel scared or guilty for being honest with their father. Once they had calmed down and gone to bed, I confronted my parents again. I demanded to know how they could justify betraying me like this, how they could go behind my back for years, lie to my face, and manipulate my children. Their response was as infuriating as it was heartbreaking. They truly believed they were doing the right thing, that they were restoring balance and preserving a sacred bond between a mother and her children. They admitted they had always thought I was too harsh on Angela, that even though she had cheated, she was still the girls' mother and deserved to see them, that, in their eyes, I was being cruel by keeping her away. They never saw it as a betrayal of me, only as doing what was best for them. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I asked them if they even realized what kind of message they had been sending to my daughters all this time. That it's okay to lie, to sneak, to deceive your own parent, as long as it's for a good reason. That God would punish them for honesty, that their mother who left them, who abandoned her rights, was still somehow the victim in all of this. They had no real answers. Just more excuses, more self-righteous justifications for their years of deceit. That night, I told them I needed space. That I couldn't trust them anymore, not after everything they had done. I didn't scream, I didn't curse, I was too exhausted for that. I simply asked them to leave and give me time to figure out what came next. As for Angela, I haven't heard from her since that day at my door. I don't know what she'll do next. But what I do know is this: I will never allow her or anyone else to manipulate my daughters again. I'll protect them, even if it means standing up to my own parents. Because unlike them, I know what true loyalty looks like. And I know that family isn't just about blood. It's about trust, honesty, and doing the right thing, even when it's hard. My parents must have really drilled the fear into my daughters, warning them of terrible consequences if they ever told me the truth. That's why they had been so secretive and vague this entire time. I also started feeling like a horrible father for never pressing them more about which friends of my parents they were spending time with. It could have been anyone. It could have been someone dangerous. And I never would have known. But that ends now. I'm getting a restraining order against all of them. I already have solid written proof. My parents had the audacity to send me an email a couple of days after our fight, telling me everything. They genuinely thought that the email would help me see how desperate Angela was to stay in her daughters' lives, how she had struggled to balance being a mother and chasing what they called the love of her life. They thought that would somehow make me forgive them all, but all it did was confirm what I feared. They were liars, all of them, and I can't trust any of them ever again. The irony is staggering. Angela, who willingly signed away her parental rights, ended up sneaking around to meet her own kids like it was some kind of crime. All because Sean, her supposed true love, didn't want her to have any contact with her previous family. And now, even that's crumbled. They had a son together. But according to my parents, Sean wants nothing to do with either of them anymore. He got a new job offer in another city and is planning to move soon. Angela, who recently went back to work and enrolled their son in kindergarten, doesn't want to move. That difference caused countless fights. It all came to a head about 3 months ago when Sean told her he was done. He was taking the job and leaving her behind. He made it clear that being a family man wasn't for him. He wasn't willing to sacrifice his own future or happiness just to please her. He walked. All of this was meant to stir sympathy in me, but it didn't. It felt like karma had finally done its job. Justice served. I've already spoken to my lawyer, and the petition for restraining orders has been filed. My daughters and I sat down for a serious talk, and I told them that moving forward, they won't be seeing their grandparents or their mother ever again. They seem okay with it, at least for now. But we're going to continue therapy to process everything. Because I know this isn't easy. I can only imagine how hard the past 5 years have already been on them. But it ends here. Hey everyone, thank you so much for all the love, support, and kind words for my daughters. Truly, it means the world. Angela and my parents have officially been served with restraining orders and will need to appear in court soon. I don't know how they feel about any of this, and frankly, I don't care. I've blocked them on every platform and asked my friends to do the same in case they try to go through them. I've also increased the security at my house and have been working from home the past few days, just to stay extra cautious. I informed my daughter's school about the situation too. At first, I thought about keeping them home, but I didn't want their education to suffer because of this madness. Their teachers are now under strict instructions not to let anyone but me pick them up from school. I'm doing everything I can to make sure no one gets near us again. So far, things have been calm, and I'm hopeful that once the court finalizes the order, they'll back off for good. This one's short, but major. We got the restraining order. For the next 5 years, all three of them, Angela, my mom, and my dad, are legally required to stay away from me and my daughters. If they don't, the consequences will be severe. Obviously, I'm keeping all my safety measures in place for now. The last time I saw them, they looked furious, and I don't want to take any chances. My daughters and I are attending regular family counseling. We've already made huge progress, and I truly believe that in the coming months things will only get better. Right now, my only goal is their happiness. That's all that matters. So please, keep sending us your prayers, your support, and your good energy. We're moving forward, and we're healing.